All right, we're back.
And I'm back on camera.
You are back on camera this time. I think it was kind of weird for me to talk to myself
Yeah,
last week.
I bet.
It's a little different.
Sorry.
This viewership because they were like, "Who's she talking to?"
Yeah.
But kind of weird. But all right, sorry, I'm getting myself together here. So, hello everybody. I am Sarah Futa with the Futa Home Team.
I am Denise with also the Futa Home Team.
We need to find you a Futa. We'll just make you Denisse Anaya Futa. Your boyfriend wouldn't like that very
all,
much.
all of my boyfriend
Your boyfriend
changes
knows
me.
that. Well, hey guys, today we want to talk about how to buy a home. I know some of you maybe that seems really intuitive, but it's actually I don't know, not surprising. I mean, Denise and I do this all day, every day, right? We help people buy homes, sell homes. We're totally part of the process. But whether you've bought a home before or maybe it's been a long time or when you buy your first home things are a little different than when you buy your second home, or maybe you've lived in your house for 20, 30 years and you're looking to downsize and the market's a lot different today than it was. I mean, the market's a lot different today than it was 3 years ago. Wouldn't you agree, Denise?
The market is different today than it was last month. Like,
There's always things
yeah.
coming up in buying a home. So we thought we would take our Cafe y Casa webinar series this week to just talk about that. And hopefully you'll find some valuable information. So I bet you can all guess what the very first thing is we're going to say that you need to do, right?
Talk to an agent.
Exactly. Talk to an agent, engage with a realtor. It does not cost you anything to talk to a real estate professional. Um, you sign an agreement because a realtor does act in a fiduciary role with you. And in the state of Colorado, we do have a limited legal license. To be able to represent you. We don't have attorneys involved in our real estate process here in Colorado. But it's really important to engage with a realtor to talk about your goals. Denise, maybe elaborate on that a little bit more, just on the kind of goals you hear that different people have.
Yeah, I feel like well, people will come up to me and be like, "Hey, we want to buy. We're
Mhm.
just not ready. Maybe in like 3 months, maybe 6 months." It timeline, it depends a lot on what we can do. But yeah, it's more of, come up with a game plan. Where are you? Where do you want to be? Figure out timeline. That's when we start getting to talk to a lender, get a lender involved to see what the financing would look like, because the financing is probably going to be a big role in kind of what you can buy and where and what.
And absolutely. I mean, the financing piece is huge, but I also think I mean, it's kind of what we just said, right? There's people who are renting, so they might want to buy because they want to invest in themselves, right? Versus their landlord's investment. Or, maybe they bought a house kind of in the hype of things a couple years ago and it's just not the right neighborhood, or they've outgrown it, or it's too big, right? Like I think it all starts with kind of that initial goal. Like, why do you want to buy a house? Right. And that might also be like, why do you want to sell a house? Not everyone has a house to sell. But when Denise and I can understand what that bigger picture goal is, we can work with you to get to that goal. I mean, I've got a lot of clients, and it's probably just my age that goes with it, that want to downsize. Their kids have left the house, right? And we've been talking for a year just to understand what their goals are and where they're going to go. What kind of equity are they going to have to work with? Because again, kind of going into that financial piece can definitely play a big part in it, right?
Yeah. And
So,
on my side, on my demographic, I'm dealing with a lot of renters where, they're just like, okay, you know what? I'm under a lease. I don't want to break it. So let's get started. So then that way, when my lease is up, that's when we're ready to go. Or yeah, you know, some some of
or
my
they're
family and friends are starting to, marry and have kids, and so they need something to upgrade to instead of downsizing. But yeah, it's just a matter
yeah.
of what it is that you're looking for.
I think one of the biggest things we're seeing on people who are renting right now is, I mean, rentals are hard to find. And so landlords are increasing rents where, interest rates have come down and there's sort of that nice balance. So
Mhm.
anyway, talk to a realtor. Let's talk about your goals. Let us help you come up with a timeline, help you understand this process of exactly what we're going to talk about. I think the next thing I like to figure out, I mean, obviously we're going to get to the financing piece, right? Unless you have cash, which is great. You still have goals, so we want to talk through that. But what is your monthly budget, right? Like how much do you want to spend on a house? Because I'm a big believer that there is a difference between what you're approved for and what you want to purchase, right? You might get approved for $700,000, but you want to have a payment of 3,500, and at a payment of 3,500 a month, depending on what you have to put down, you might not be able to afford 700,000, right? Or vice versa. If you have a decent amount to put down and you want your payment per month to be around 3,500, you might be able to afford more than the 700,000, right? But I think, you know, there's often a misconception between how much you're approved for versus how much you really want to pay. Would you agree?
Oh yeah. I mean, I get that a lot where it's like, "Oh yeah, like, I'm qualified for 700K," and then they're like, "Oh, the payment is a little higher than I thought." So, that's when I'm like, "Okay, you're qualified at the 700, but you don't have to buy at the 700. Let's look somewhere lower and then figure out what what you want for your monthly payment to be, and then we can figure out what that purchase price would look like for you to have that monthly payment."
Yep. How can
But
we marry the two? How can we marry your goal and your budget, right? Because that's a big piece of it. And you don't want to get so far into it. I mean, we talked about this earlier. I've got a client that I worked with that kind of got ahead of the game, right? They went a little too fast, and we were going to achieve their goals, but we had to set some expectations and kind of take a step back because they hadn't figured out some of these things that we're talking to you about today, which comes into the next one. How much money have you saved? What do you have? What are we working with? Now, this is in two forms. I think if you currently own a home, there's the conversation of the equity you have and what you're going to do with that, right? So that could be the source of your down payment, right? Or if you're going to rent that house and buy another one, that's a whole nother webinar we're going to do on house hacking down the
Mhm.
road. But on the flip side, like what do you have in your savings? Because there are expenses that you have to pay before you close up front that I think sometimes people forget about. So, I mean, the biggest one is earnest money, right? That's the very first thing. When you go under contract, you usually have 2 to 3 days to deliver earnest money, and that check is cashed. That is part of your down payment, but it is your consideration. It's your financial consideration for that home seller to know that you're serious about buying that home, and that's usually about 1% of the sales price, right? So, kind of a guide. I mean, it varies a little bit, but Denise, that's about what you see, right?
Yeah, it's usually so if it's $700,000 home, then 7,000 would
Yep.
be what you have to turn in within 3 days that you're under contract.
Yes. So you got to have that money, right? And then there's your down payment. So you might be putting 3.5% down, 5%, 10%, 15, 20, 50. I mean, everyone's percentages are different, but where's that money coming from? So again, we talked about the equity. Maybe you've saved it. Maybe you're going to do a down payment assistance program, which we had talked about that in our webinar last week. There's ways to get that, but we need to understand where that money is coming from. And then the third piece that I think people forget about is closing costs.
Mhm.
So you put your earnest money down. That's part of your down payment, okay? But then there's also closing costs, lender fees, appraisal fees, title lending fees, taxes, insurance, right? There's money that just accumulates. So when we have a conversation with you and we understand your goals, we're going to want to get a general idea of how much money you do have saved. So if you don't have enough, we can put that in our plan and kind of give you a target based on the price point that you're looking at and the different factors. I mean, everyone's different, right? I mean, very, very rarely are we dealing with the same person twice,
Yeah.
but yeah. So, okay. So we've had the conversation. We've sort of figured out the financial landscape. I'm going to disclose really quick. Denise and I are not lenders. We're not, we're fiduciary in the sense of giving you guidance on investing your financial resources into real estate. But we are not the money side of the business, right? We guide you. We want to protect your investment and until the closing. So after we sort of get a clear picture of what your goals are and what that financial snapshot looks like, we want to connect you with one of our preferred lenders and get you pre-approved.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll get you pre-approved. You'll talk to them. That's when you will talk to the lender about, having to talk about your income. You'll have to show bank statements, pay stubs, taxes, uh, everything. They'll run your credit. I mean, they'll look through everything. And so once we once they have all of that, they run their numbers, and then they'll give you like a purchase price that you can start shopping at, and then that's again we'll see what the estimated monthly payment would look like on a home like that, and then see if you want to go a little bit lower or start seeing homes that are at that price or lower, whatever the case may be.
Full disclosure, the mortgage process is the most frustrating part of the entire process. Okay. And it's not the lender's fault. For those of us that were around, whether it was us personally, whether it was our parents, whether it was a family member, we all know what happened in like 08, 09. Okay. That's when the banks were just giving money to everybody. It's a process, right? I mean, they are going to look at every single dollar you have, where it came from. I mean, I remember, and this was 5, 6 years ago, I deposited a check for like $110, I think, from my sister. And I had to like prove that my sister wrote me this check, even though we had a copy. I mean, it was this whole process, right? Like it was,
Mhm.
it's intense, but it is intense. But if you think of it, if you take a step back and look at it, I mean, the banks, the mortgage lender, I mean, they're giving you a lot of money.
Mhm.
That That's not a small amount, right? So they just need to cover their bases, and that's how they do it, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to get your pre-approval. We're going to come up with a timeline. Maybe you get a pre-approval and we're like, oh my gosh, all of this makes sense and we are aligning to your goals. Let's go. Maybe you get a pre-approval and we're like, you know what? This isn't aligning to your goals. So what do we need to do to get to where you want to be? So this does make sense. And we sort of keep an eye on things and then go from there. Um, I always joke, and it's not really a joke, it's serious. Like, you're not on Denise and my timeline. We're on your timeline,
Yeah.
right? You're buying the home. We're not buying the home.
Yeah.
As much
We're
as
here
we'd
to
love to,
guide you, not tell you when to buy.
we'd love for you to be on our timeline. That would be great, but that's just not how it works, right? We're on your timeline, so we want to work with you um, to achieve that, right? To whatever that's going to take. So maybe it's right now, maybe it's 3 months from now, maybe it's a year from now, right? I mean, we had clients last summer. We even went out and looked at houses, and it just wasn't lining up. And so
Mhm.
they rented for another year. And that's
Mhm.
okay, right? I mean, obviously we want to get them in a home, but it wasn't the goals weren't aligning. It wasn't, it
Timing
didn't make
just
sense.
wasn't right.
Yeah, it wasn't right. So, if you're working with a realtor that pushes you or doesn't understand that alignment, um,
Maybe it's not the best fit.
yeah, reconsider.
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's just assume we kind of get through this pass. We understand the number side of it. We understand your goals. Everything is in alignment, and this seems like a good thing to move forward. We're going to hit the ground running. We're going to start looking at houses, right? So, what's great about our team is we have a lot of resources, right? You are going to have a dedicated front person that will work for you. But I mean, a perfect example, Denise doesn't know this yet. Well, she knows I'm going to be out of town this weekend, but I've got buyers that might need to be shown. And so she's going to have to step in and help that. And when she's out of town, I can step in to help. And we also have other resources that you don't see on this webinar
Yeah.
that are helping us as well. So, because again, we're on your timeline, not our
If
timeline.
you need to see a house, we're gonna
Yeah.
make sure you see it.
You see that
And with
house.
the market picking up a little bit, we need to make sure you see it right away.
Exactly. Exactly. So, we've got a great website. We'll send you houses. We know a lot of you like to use Zillow. Redfin, Gross, Realtor, whatever. I mean, do you, but we could
I can't hate on it because I know Zillow makes it very user
it does.
friendly.
It does. Like if you want to text us houses that you want to see, that's fine. We'll figure out the back end of it. But we're gonna look at houses. We're gonna understand like the first time we go out, we might find something you like. It's happened, right? Sometimes we don't. It just depends. But we start to get a better idea of what you like. And then as more houses come on, we might push back on you a little bit, right? To be like, hey, you said you really, that fourth bedroom was really important. This one only has three and no option for, something. Do you really want to go see this? Or, you said that a finished basement was really important to you and this one doesn't have a finished basement. Tell me why you want to go see this, right? And that's just part of the process because otherwise we're going to go out and look at 50 homes and trust me, we have had clients that we've looked at 50 homes with, but our job is to narrow it in to again kind of align those goals.
Yeah,
So
have your wants and needs list, and we'll
exactly.
make sure to also, keep that in
ex-
mind.
Exactly. So let's say we look at some houses, we find one that you like and we want to go under contract. So typically we look at a lot of houses, right? So we're not going to dig into all the details and the comps and stuff of every house that we show you. But once you identify that you like a house, right, and that you're interested, that's when we're going to step in and dig a little bit deeper, right? What's the seller motivation? What kind of terms in the contract would be attractive to them besides price? Because we all know
Price is
everybody.
always
Yeah.
obviously important, like, the seller's always looking for that, but price is not the main thing that will have a seller consider taking your offer. It can be the terms, it could be the how fast you can close, it can be if you're going to do an inspection or not, things like that, and we'll walk you through what that process looks like and what you're comfortable offering.
So we could probably spend the next 30 minutes just talking about writing an offer. So maybe that's another webinar. But
We'll bore them.
one of the most important things, and this is different state by state, guys. This is not, the entire nation kind of thing. What's really cool is in the state of Colorado, well, cool if you're a buyer, is in the
Yes.
state of Colorado, is that the contract to buy a house protects the buyer. It protects your earnest money. We lay out all our dates. We know when your inspection has to be done by. We know when your appraisal needs to be done by. We know when you're going to close. We know when you're going to have possession of the home. It lays out everything. And once we negotiate to get you under contract, it's our job to negotiate on inspection. It's our job to negotiate on appraisal. It's our job to protect your earnest money so that if for some reason along the way on these different milestones that are outlined in the offer, something goes sideways, our goal is that you would be able to terminate that contract and get your earnest money back. Okay. But because the contract protects the buyer, worst case scenario, I mean, it could be the day before closing and just something doesn't feel right. You could cancel, just not get your earnest money back, right? So it's nobody likes to do that. So don't take that as advice from us or anything. But I just think it's important to know as a buyer that your earnest money is what you're risking. But at the end of the day, the contract protects you. Whereas the seller couldn't cancel the contract
Yeah.
or you could sue them in a nutshell. That's the basics, right? So
Just
um,
something to know.
yes. So after we do find a property and we get under contract, probably the biggest deadline, which is usually a week to a week and a half after going under contract, is an inspection. So Denise, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes, so the inspection is done. I like to schedule it right after we go under contract. Like, let's know what's wrong with the with the home before we move forward. But yeah, the and I will help you schedule the inspection. I'll give you a couple of options, get a couple quotes, and then the most common inspections that I would say are the general inspection. So that just inspects your whole house, the radon gas inspection just to make sure there's no high levels of radon gas, and then the sewer line, the sewer scope. I think those three ones are super, super important. They're not required, but highly, highly, highly recommend. I always tell clients that you want to know what is wrong with the home up front versus closing on a home, finding out that the sewer line has cracks, and you need $10,000 to replace it. So it's not
10,000.
fun. Yeah. And yeah, and so it is out of pocket. And it is an upfront cost that you have to pay the day of closing or the day
For
after.
a
But
inspection.
it's around, for all those three, it's around 700,
Yep.
give or take. So yeah, just keep that in mind. But the inspection is super important, and you are well in your right to ask the seller for any repairs. They are also in their right to decline any of those repairs. They can also say, hey, I'm willing to fix everything that you're asking me to, just so that we can stay under contract. So that's where we will also guide you and see what your options may be.
Yep. So I think just to recap kind of the financial piece of it, right? You go under contract, you're going to need that earnest money and you're going to have to pay for your inspection. Okay? The rest of the money is not due until we close, which is
Yes.
typically 30 days from when we go under contract. That's pretty standard in Colorado. Sometimes we can go faster, sometimes we might need a little bit more time, but just kind of in that 30-day window, just know like at the beginning of that 30 days, you're putting your earnest money down and you're paying for the inspection. And then at the end of that 30 days, you're buying the house, you're putting your down payment down, your closing costs, all of that's figured in into one with the credit from your earnest money. Okay. So you take all that, we close on the house. I mean, that kind of naturally brings us, there's lots of things in between, guys, right? And again, for the sake of time, we're not going to go through the whole contract with you. If you'd like to have a one-on-one conversation, we are always open for those where we can really fine tune to that experience. But one other thing I like to note is when you move into a new home, it's new space, right? It's new rooms, it's new decor. Um, again, and kind of looking at your goals and your financial situation, you've the biggest chunk of your money is going towards buying the house,
Mhm.
right? But you also want to make sure you've got a somewhat comfortable budget for when you move into the house because I mean, there's furniture, there's, like I said, decor, there's paint, there's maybe a little home improvement. I mean, Home Depot or Lowe's, or you're going to feel like you're there every single day, right? And Target, Amazon's going to know your address probably faster than you're going to know your address, right? Like, um, but just keep that in mind, right? So it's just, you don't want, we don't ever want anyone to buy a house and like be house poor is what they say, right?
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
you want to make sure that you take into consideration just expenses, especially, I mean, we haven't, this is a whole nother webinar, but new home construction, right? I mean, new
Yeah.
home construction, you've got to put the fence in the backyard. You've got to put the
Mhm.
landscaping. If you want a patio, you got to pour the patio. Half the time they don't come with refrigerators. You need a refrigerator. They do not come with washer and dryers. You need a washer and dryer. Window coverings. Some
Yeah,
new homes
window
have window
coverings.
coverings, some don't. Like I always say you move into a new construction home and you're a good 10 to 20,000 just to make sure people aren't watching you at night. Yeah. Like, you're getting that stuff
Yeah,
done, right?
yeah,
Oh,
'cause it's
so
moving ready, but
it is.
there
Yeah.
is some
I mean, everything's new and new is nice. Don't
additional
get me wrong,
things.
but you have to be aware of those additional expenses, I think, moving into any home, whether it's new construction or resale.
Yeah, I think before we move on, speaking
Yeah.
of those additional costs, with your monthly payment, also consider, you have utilities too. So your electric bill, your water bill, all of that is not included within your mortgage payment. So keep in mind there's going to be additional costs there monthly.
Yep, absolutely. Perfect. Well, we hope that this has been informative for you guys. I know, sometimes we've got people live watching with us. Sometimes we've got today,
Which is
no one's
fun.
watching with us live. Thank God. But if you are, thank you very much. But either a recording or anything, we hope you can always reach out to us, leave comments, whether you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube. We're getting ready to release our February schedule, just working on a couple final details, but to give you a sneak peek at what we're going to be talking about, I want to say like the second week of February, we're actually going to be talking about moving to Tampa, Florida. All right. Like
Mhm.
lots of movement between
Wondered.
Colorado and Florida. So we're going to have one of our partners in Florida join us and just talk about what that looks like, right? Give you an idea of what's going on in the Tampa, Florida real estate market. We're also working with one of our estate attorneys to talk about trusts and the benefits of that. House hacking from a mortgage perspective is another thing we're looking at. So keep an eye out for that schedule. And then Denise, what's the day of our free coffee?
The next day is February 16th. So
Perfect.
yeah, stop by Convivio Cafe. Anytime between 8 and 9. I'll be there. Sarah will probably be there.
Oh, I'm
Um,
gonna miss that one. That's my sister's wedding.
ooh, never mind. I will
So,
be going solo.
and really quick, we have this book. It's your first time home or your first home book. It's great for first time home buyers. We also have it in Spanish.
Oh yeah.
So,
So déjenme
Denise
saber si
in
quieren un
Spanish.
libro.
There you go. I was like, say something in Spanish. Let them know it's real. Uh,
I love that book. It goes really into detail about what we just talked about, but then it really helps you figure out what you're looking for. Like, is it a townhome? Is it a condo? Is it a single family? Like, it walks you through all of that. So it's really nice.
it is good.
And you can get it for free. So
Yes, we'll
yeah.
give you it. Reach out to us. We'd love to send it to you. We would love to send it to you. So, all right, guys. Well, we hope you join us next Monday. Here, I'm going to put up our QR code here.
Mm.
You can scan that. You can learn about our free coffee. You can check out our website, learn about all our different resources. Um, enter to win an espresso coffee
Oh yeah,
machine.
that's what's
If
going on. Espresso.
you're watching this in January or February of 2024, because we know we're going to stay around for eternity now with this video. But we've got that giveaway. And if you're watching this after then, I'm sure there'll be another giveaway. I just can't tell you what
Mhm.
it is at this point. So check it out. But we appreciate you joining us. Reach out to us with any questions. We're pretty easy to find. We're tagged all over social media. But yeah, make it a great week. Thanks, Denise.
Bye. See you
Bye.
next week.